Testing, testing. Still way too loud. Dang it, Jamie. Can you please come get Ellie? Okay, let's try this again. You're listening to The Neurodivergent Nurse, and I'm your host, Jamie. I'm a registered nurse who has ADHD. On this podcast, we will talk all things ADHD. I'm really just beginning to learn about this diagnosis and how to navigate through it. But I am so excited to take you on this messy and raw journey with me so that we can learn together. So let's get started. Hello, and happy 2024, and welcome to an episode of The Neurodivergent Nurse. I'm pretty sure you may have thought, I'm never gonna hear Jamie's voice again, or another episode of the Neurodivergent Nurse podcast. Man, I sure miss those ADHD tips. Well, guess what? You were wrong, because I am back. I'm here. If you're a part of the Patreon or paid subscribers on Instagram, then you have a good idea of what kind of has been going on other than organic chemistry since June-ish, July-ish, and that has kind of impeded on the ability to be able to produce podcast episodes the way that I wanted, but here we are again. If you are a Patreon of the Neurodivergent Nurse and you're actually watching this, not just listening to it, and you're thinking, why are you recording where you are? I'm going to be honest, I have tried to come and record episodes of the podcast because I love doing it. I love recording podcasts. I love talking to you. I love the feedback. I love just having a community that includes you so much. And I've sat down and I've started recording multiple episodes over the past few weeks that has included episodes on the what is a trigger versus just a general disdain or dislike for something. The issues that we have with communication and ADHD, and there's so many others that I, again, sat and started to record, and then maybe I got distracted, or maybe my perfectionist part of my ADHD brain kicked in, and I was like, man, I just look terrible in this light, or whatever else. So what I'm doing today is taking my own advice. I feel like I should hear a great round of applause. If you're not driving, then go ahead and give it to me. I don't mind. But I'm taking my own advice, and I just kind of changed up the scenery a little bit. So I'm actually in my entertainment room in my house. You can see my Alabama thing hanging in the background. If I could flip the camera around, which I'm not going to do because that would be so much chaos. You see all my sports stuff all around me. But sometimes a change of scenery can be exactly what we need to stay steady and to just give us a fresh mindset, to help us just think a little bit differently, especially if we hit this block or we just kind of get bogged down into our old thinking of not being good enough or not being pretty enough or whatever else it could be. So again, if you're a Patreon member and you're watching this, not just listening to it, that explains why we're not in my super cool podcast room. So now that we're back and we're talking again, how's your 2024 starting out for you? How did 2023 end up for you? I always love New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. If you know me or if you've been listening long enough, then I'm sure I've mentioned that plenty of times. I just love the excitement of the new year. I love the new possibilities that are on the horizon and the feeling of being able to leave something behind. It's kind of like when you decide that you're going to go on a diet. We're not going to get into whether diets are good or bad or whatever else. And you say, I am going to start my diet on Monday and I'm going to be super strict about it. Right? That's how I feel that New Year's Day is. That we can say 2023 or whatever year it is just really sucked so much. But you know what? Starting day one of 2024, I am going into it with a fresh mindset and excitement and knowing that all of that stuff is behind me. There is a point of beginning of something new. A lot of times we don't keep up that same oomph into the entire year, but I really love the excitement and the hope that everybody has when going into the new year and on New Year's Eve, I don't know, just celebrating that all together. It's one of my favorites. Speaking of 2024 and how it should be starting out, today I had one of those ADHD frustrating moments. I turned it into an Instagram reel. If you don't follow me on the Neurodivergent Nurse podcast, nope, it's just the Neurodivergent Nurse on Instagram. I don't even know anymore, but it's the Neurodivergent Nurse on Instagram. If you don't follow me there, you probably should. There's some great tips and things like that. But I posted a reel today about what happened this morning thanks to my ADHD, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put the clip in here because it'll tell you that story. And if you are, again, a Patreon or paid subscriber, then you're going to be able to watch it for yourself. Some days I hate having ADHD so much, and it's so frustrating and so infuriating. As a nurse, you have to keep up with your certifications every 2 years because of the role that you work in. Well, I'm a rapid response nurse, so I have to have all the certifications and they all have to stay current, and every 2 years I have to have them renewed. I take like this big class that has all the things in it because that was the only one that could work with my schedule. Well, when you sign up for this class, they send you an email telling you the links to go to in order to take this pre-course work. And once you finish your pre-course work, they want you to print it out and bring it into class along with your current certifications, which I did last night, and I packed it up. And I did the things early that I was supposed to do because I had to leave at 5:30 this morning to drive an hour and a half because that's how far away I live from work and where this class is. So I got in here early. I triple checked to make sure that I was in the right place. Everything else, I go in, I give the forms to the person who's going to be teaching the class. And she said, great, I'm glad that you gave me this, but I don't need this. I need the certificates of you completing it. You know, I'm trying to figure out how do I get to the certificates from my phone to show this lady. And the girl said, did you do all the videos? They're like 4 hours. No, I didn't know there were videos attached to this coursework that I was supposed to do. It just said to print out the results, and that's what I did. So I just got up and left the classroom without saying anything to anyone, and now I'm going to drive an hour and a half back home because ADHD. We're going to go ahead and we are going to just dive into it. Clearly, those of us with ADHD, we struggle and we find difficulty with following directions. Following instructions is a skill that people of all ages rely on in many different situations. Like we were talking about with children. They struggle with that. They, as in we, when we were children as well, struggle with that at school. We likely struggle with that at work and just in our everyday life, like me earlier. However, people with ADHD often struggle with following instructions, and that can be frustrating for both the person who is giving them the instructions, and especially it can be frustrating for those of us with ADHD who are having that difficulty. Let's talk about why. Why do we struggle with following instructions? There's a few reasons why people with ADHD have difficulty following directions. One reason is that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects what's called executive dysfunction. We talked about executive dysfunction in a lot of my webinars in the past. Another thing that I need to get back into, but is kind of difficult while taking organic chemistry and, you know, some of the other stuff that the Patreon members know. Anyhow, executive function is a set of skills that helps us plan, organize, and manage our thoughts and actions. People with ADHD often have difficulty with executive function skills, so that's part of the reason why it makes it harder for us to follow instructions. Another reason why those of us with ADHD may have difficulty following instructions is that we may have working memory deficits. Yeah, I'm sure your mind is just blown right now. Yeah, not really. Working memory, in case you don't know, working memory is the ability to hold information in our minds for a short period of time. Those of us with ADHD, we often have difficulty with working memory. So it can make it difficult for us to remember the instructions that we were given. And one of the other final reasons that those of us with ADHD struggle whenever it comes with instructions is that we may have a difficult time because we're easily distracted. Yeah, it kind of makes sense whenever you think about it, doesn't it? We may have difficulty paying attention to the person who's giving us the instructions, or we may be distracted by our own thoughts or whatever's happening around us in our environment whenever we're getting the instructions. It's a little bit different than the email that I received, but I'm going to be honest, thinking back, I don't know how in depth I went into the email. It was so long. The font was really weird. It made me feel itchy on the inside. The font did. So I just scanned and read, hey, click this link. This is what you need to do. Here are the key points. It's just wild thinking about how we browse over things like that because our mind, we just can't do it. Here are a couple of things that those of us with ADHD can do to help improve our abilities to follow instructions. The first thing is to get instructions in writing. This is going to help you remember the steps to the task, and it's going to help you stay on track. Also, very similar to today, if there is a situation in which your job could be on the line because you have to have certain requirements, if you get it in writing, you can always refer back to it. And if you check it 5,000 times like I do, then you're going to be able to ease the panic inside your head temporarily. Something that could be beneficial to you since you have ADHD is to break down complex instructions into smaller steps. By doing this, it's going to make your task seem less daunting, and it's going to make it a whole lot easier for you to stay focused. The third thing that you can do, I know, like even getting ready to tell you this makes me super uncomfortable, but you can ask for clarification if you don't understand something. Again, let me say I know for like the 15th time. I completely understand where you're coming from and the anxiety that it gives you, because asking for clarification may make you feel like you are subpar. It may make you feel like you are inadequate, that you may not be intelligent enough. Let's just say it, that you may be dumb or stupid. Those can certainly be things that you would feel if you found yourself in a position that you needed to ask for clarification. However, I'm going to encourage you to not be afraid to ask the person who is giving you instructions to repeat them or to explain them in more details for you. I hope that will help you kind of reconstruct your mind or your thought process on asking for help. Whatever seems like a very strange request or something that you don't understand, that you then in that moment can ask for more clarity. Okay, so the next one is, if you are fortunate enough to do this, something that can help you is to find a quiet place to work where you're going to be less likely to be distracted. And the last one is to take breaks if you need them. It's okay to take a short break to clear your head and to come back to the task when you're feeling refreshed, when you're feeling renewed. Because we understand how difficult it is when people give us instructions, let's also talk about how we can give clear instructions and directions as those of us with ADHD, because we also will trail off on things that we are super passionate about, right? Here are a couple tips if you're the person who has to give instruction to another individual, whether they have ADHD or not. The first thing that you need to do, which seems super obvious, but be clear and concise. You need to avoid using vague or ambiguous language. So if you're telling someone that they need to go down the road for some time, tell them you need to go down the road. The third road on the right is going to say Baltimore Avenue. Those are things that you need to make sure whenever you're giving instructions to other people that you can give them the specifics of it. Okay, the second thing that we can do if we are having to give instructions or directions to people is to give instructions one step at a time. We so desperately need to have instructions given to us one step at a time. So don't go down that road, like I said, about something that you're passionate about. Go ahead, make sure that they understand with each instruction that you give them that they are able to repeat it back to you, that they can consume whatever instruction that you are giving them. The third thing, check for understanding. It's kind of what I just said, but ask the person to repeat back the instructions, not to make them feel dumb, not to make them feel stupid, not to make them feel like they are any less than, right? But you want them to repeat back the instructions to make sure that they understood what you were asking them to do. Another great thing to do is to provide breaks. Allow the person that you are talking to, that you're making requests for, etc., allow them to take short breaks as they are needed. The very last one that we're going to talk about is to be patient and be supportive. Following instructions can be super challenging, as you know, for people with ADHD. So it's really, really important for you to be patient and for you to be supportive. Difficulty following instructions is such a common challenge for those of us with ADHD. However, there are a few things that people with the ADHD and people who interact with us who have some type of neurodivergency can do to improve the situation. By following the tips that I just mentioned in this podcast, people with ADHD can improve their ability to follow instructions, but it has to be a thing that comes from both sides. Following instructions can be challenging for those of us with ADHD, but also we need to recognize that whoever we're interacting with, whoever we are giving instructions or directions to, they may have ADHD and we don't know it. So why not just go ahead and follow all of these good rules that we would benefit from in general, which includes this patient and supportive aspect of it. Hopefully, crossing my fingers, those of us with ADHD can improve our ability to follow instructions. I want to thank you for hanging on. I want to thank you for the last 6-7 months or so just waiting around until I came back. But I am back and I really appreciate you jumping in here, and I look forward to the good stuff that we have to talk about in the near future. Thank you for tuning in today, and I can't wait to talk to you again.